Welcome to the Developing Life Podcast.
Welcome to another meaningful episode of the Developing Life Podcast, where we dive deep into the intersection of design, community, and technology. I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Isabelle Poirier, an exceptional brand designer and the driving force behind the Ottawa Design Club. Izzy's passion for building creative communities has not only shaped the design scene in Ottawa, but Marseille and New York. Today, we'll explore her creative journey, the art of zine-making, and how she sees human connection evolving as AI becomes more integrated into our daily lives. This conversation, led by host Heath Crank, is all about discovering how design communities will thrive in the digital age and leaving with practical, actionable insights on building meaningful creative spaces.
Thank you, Devron. Hello, Izzy. It's so nice to speak with you and have you on the podcast finally.
Thank you so much for having me. This is fun.
You are welcome. So for our guests, I'm going to speak with Izzy for a little bit, and then in about 45 minutes, I'll open it up for questions. So, Izzy, let's get right into it. I've known you for a while. We met through Krista's Future Pro group, and we're in a cohort together. You're an amazing brand designer, strategist. You do a ton of things. So I'm super curious, how did you get into design?
So it came out of the necessity almost, if we go back to the roots, because I have a BFA, so bachelor's degree in fine arts, and we were under, I'm Canadian for anyone who doesn't know, so we were under a conservative government when I graduated, which meant that the arts did not have much space or no funding. And I had to have a deep look at myself and trying to find, okay, how can I monetize all of this creativity? At first, I was going to become an art teacher just like my parents, but after a quick trip to the museum with my mom's class, I figured out that I hated teaching younger people, and when I say younger, she is or was a high school teacher, but I was just like, this is not for me. so I needed to find a way to channel all this creativity, and I just thought that design would be just a great fit. I knew how to use Photoshop. I had done a photography major, and I knew how to do a lot of photo montage and generally enjoyed doing it. So this is where the bug started. So this is how I got into it, and it grew from them. Every project brought a new learning, got me in a new direction, got to learn so much of myself and my talents, really. Mm-hmm. And here we are today, where I'm working for myself. It's my 4th year in business and doing so many things.
So you were going to school and you decided teaching high school students was not for you. How did you go from that to running your own business? I would love to hear you connect the dots.
Did you see my expression that I just did? I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a long story. I'll try to give you the short version.
Yeah, give me the clip notes.
Yes, which is hard. Please stop me if I'm taking the detour.
Okay.
So it started out as after I graduated, exactly what I said. I had to refine my design skills, so I took some night classes in design just to learn Illustrator and I knew Photoshop, but Photoshop in a design sense. And I even took some web design classes. Those classes were very much, here's all the tools and here's what you can do with them. You could not build a portfolio. So in order for me to gain experience and knowing the art industry or the ins and out of it, because I was just freshly out of a BFA, I actually went to a lot of art openings and offered people if they wanted me to do their website. And this was 14 years ago. Mm-hmm. I'm aging myself, but at that time, people needed help to do their website. And when I said that one thing led to another, it's insane because my photography teacher actually hired me to do her website, and that has led me to getting a communications assistant job as a designer in an art gallery that then followed to me getting a graphic design job at the government for 5 years. The government is definitely where I have learned the most about the craft of design, or maybe I self-taught myself because, let's be honest, it's not the most creative space. But I'd say that the government has helped me to learn a lot about myself because I was so unhappy and the culture was definitely not for me, that this is what pushed me to pivot everything and then work for myself and finding that connection back again with working with artists and creatives, because this is where I strive the most. I hope this answered the question properly. Yeah.
Yeah, that was perfect. Okay, so you're at the government. I'm assuming you leave the government and you did go on this journey of entrepreneurship. And at some point you start the Ottawa Design Club. So walk me through really quickly how that happened.
So it was actually at the same time. When I was planning my exit at the government, I was also planning like this club. So I have to give credit to the Montreal Design Club, who are no longer operating, but I had attended one of their events and just fell in love with everything. Called them after 2 weeks of attending that event and said, hey, can I open a club exactly like what you're doing, but in Ottawa? This was a very strategic move on my end because working in the government, being in-house and often the only designer in a communications team, I had no network, no community, no friends that could speak the same language and geek out like me. So building the club came out of a personal need of finding other mini Izzies to geek out with and have a support system. I did not know how much it would take on, though. Because when I look at it now, I'm like, wow, I literally launched 2 businesses at the same time. And it's crazy how much they are both intertwined within one another and learning from one another. But I think that this was the motivation why it had to happen. And we're here to talk community. As a business owner, it's really important to have community around you.
True. This is very, very true. So, okay, so let's talk for a minute about the Ottawa Design Club. So what is that? What's your role? And how does the Ottawa Design Club operate? I feel like it has this very interesting structure in the way that it is spread across many, many areas.
All right. So essentially at the core, it is a speaker event series where we offer a safe space for creatives to geek out. When we say design, it's in the verb of designing, which means fashion design, art, like anything that has to do with this. It could even be designing events, designing an experience. And the way we operate the event on its own, it's a little different because usually when you attend an event, you have your speakers and then the networking, where we actually flip it upside down. We start with the networking with some volunteers in the room actually are going to come and talk to you. That's very strategic on our end. We call them social butterflies because we want you to feel seen and want you to feel good. And we want to start the conversation. We also have activities that is related to the topic that we are exploring that night. So people can get hands-on with the topic and already have an open mind whenever we have the speakers on stage. So they get to interact with the content in a different way. And after that, we have the presentation, we have a followed panel, quick Q&A, and then we go back into more networking. So this is at the core. We also have zines, which I think we're going to touch on later on. This was a pandemic initiative to elevate more creative voices in a printed format. And this came out of a need because when we were in the pandemic where we could not be in person and we were meeting online, we knew that we were missing out on the community because they were already being online for a full day in front of a screen. So having another workshop on a screen was redundant. But creating a tactile book with everyone's handles and website and little stories was a way to create an object that not only inspired, but also was an object of connectivity, if you want, for the viewers and readers to interact with the artist. Well, we hope that that's what they do and carry on the conversation. Yeah. So it was like packaging the meaning of our events into something in a design package, if you want, an artistic package that we can then offer back to the community.
I think that's so interesting because what I've noticed is a shift that happened during the pandemic and is still happening now, where the human touch, creativity, community has become so important. When we lost it, I feel like we understood its value more. So I'd love to hear you talk about why community matters, why coming together as a design community is important. And I'd also love to hear your story about how you met Swiss Miss and how she inspired you.
Yes. So the first question, why community matters? It just does. And I know I should go into a more like detailed explanation for this, but it really does because, and I'll go with it with a very personal answer here. It's just creating, again, like that support system that you can go and ask questions and maybe they can help you or you can help them into their career. And this is how that you propagate your personal mission. I feel that as business owners, we want to be known for like a specific thing. And to me, this is very much on designing experiences and building a community. I needed to prove that to myself first before I could prove it to my clients. It's like I knew how to do it because I worked in an art gallery where we had events and we had art exhibitions and all this. But for a client who is coming and asking, hey, like I need a branding for this event. If I would say I worked at a gallery, they can't connect the two and two together. And there's not necessarily that social proof. But I'm going here again, like a very personal answer, but why does community matter? It's just because you can't do it alone, no matter what.
It's true. Okay, so tell me about how you met Swiss Miss and
oh yes,
and tell me about her and like your experience with her and how she inspired you.
So Swiss Miss, her name is Tina Roth Eisenberg. She is the founder of Creative Mornings, and I attended from the government. I was able to get a full pass at the Design Thinkers conference. Oh, wow. And I was very lucky because it's a $600 ticket, and the government is very frugal. So anywho, and again, I was like planning my exit, so this was very strategic for me to like ask for them to put me on this train and go all the way to Toronto and be at this conference. But she talked about how she built the idea behind Creative Mornings and how it had propagate. And she invited us to ask questions at the end. And in a big crowd, you can wave your hand, but they're not necessarily always going to pick you So I sent her a private DM after thanking her for the presentation. And I said, I'm about to build a community of my own. What is the one thing that I should always keep in mind? And she told me, never forget why you're in it. And to me, at that point, without knowing, again, what I was getting myself into, I was like, well, duh. But after a few years of being in it, being out of the pandemic and just going through all the motions and frictions with building a community and offering for a community, now I know what she meant. Because when you think, so people know how much work, they have an idea of how much work it requires, but they don't actually know how much work it requires. You've been like working for Ben Design, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. And until you're actually doing it, that's when you realize how much work there is. And yes, I have found myself crying and saying I quit for every freaking event. I'm just like, why am I giving myself this headache? And oh my goodness. And like, yeah, my fiance is in the room and he's like giving me a heart because he has to pick up the pieces every time. So it is hard. And such a wonderful moment has happened last year when I met Tina again. And I went to shake her hand. It's like I built up the courage finally to go and shake her hand. And I said, you have said something to me that has changed my life. And I want you to know the impact that it has done. And then I mentioned that created the club and all this. And she said to me, you're so lucky that I answered that. Because I don't think that she answers like everyone, because she has like shit ton of followers. So I mean, to me that makes it all more special that I was one of the lucky ones that she gave that amazing advice to. And it's something that I need to remind myself and hold on to, maybe like as like the friction keeps going. But whenever it's like a downtime, like right now, it's good to think about this little anecdote.
Yeah. And you know, there's a funny thing about friction. I feel like a lot of people avoid it, but I think it's a necessary part of the growth process. When you're in those moments of difficulty and friction, how do you keep going, Izzy?
Thankfully, with how the club has grown, a lot of people have come to us, and we have a team of 10 people now. Wow. So whenever it gets difficult, I am a strong believer of being extremely transparent with my team. Even though I'm technically at the top, I don't see a hierarchy with the team. Everyone brings something special. And I always tell them, we are a big cog system. So when one cog isn't working, it affects everything else. So let's just be honest with each other and let's talk about like what's not going on or what is going on so we can support each other. So whenever there is friction, I just tell them, we have a Slack channel, and I guess I'm a millennial, so I like to do the voice notes instead of typing, but I will send them a voice note and I'll be like, guys, I'm at the end of my rope. I need help. Can we huddle and talk about this problem and figure it out? I need to have an answer by this. If you don't have the time, it's cool. Just looking for support here. And then they will do the same if they are going through something obviously about the club, but we are tight enough that if there is something personal, they will tell me.
That's nice. It sounds like you have a really beautiful system of trust. That's really unusual. So pat yourself on the back. I haven't worked with too many organizations that have that level of transparency. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
So you're in the Ottawa Design Club, and you also create these incredible zines. And I had the honor of being in one of them. there's a lot of energy and buzz with the collective effort in those zines. Can you speak to that and how you pick your topics?
Oh my gosh. So we are always inspired by the community in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, our first zine was called Quarant Zine. There was a nice play on word here, where we wanted to feature the pandemic isolation. So we were seeing all of this like amazing work on Instagram that people were sharing and being vulnerable. And this is when I looked at Ariane, who is the co-founder of the club, and I'm like, wouldn't it be nice just to put everything together in one place? And we should have a zine. And blindly, we both were like, yeah, let's just do that. There's so much that goes into having a publication. And then for the second, after the response of the first one, because it was very much beta, we got inspired by a submission that was rejected for the second one. And this is something that we keep telling our community. If it's a no for now, it does not mean that it's a no forever. And we like to keep the audience on their toes. We always like to plant little seeds. And for people that are looking and like are very studying our little move, we are pulling a Taylor Swift where we're like being subtle about our next moves and what we will do next. There's only a few people that pick up on them, but it's fun. So that's how pop culture was born. And then same thing for Raw. Raw was actually when that was like the first year of the pandemic, where we saw that the grid just started to change. It was no longer polished. It was, we were seeing people's like true vulnerability, and we're like, okay, like literally the whole world is telling us we need to embrace our feelings right now. So this is how we picked that topic, and then and so on and so on. So we're always looking at the community and just being inspired by them, and then trying to gather what we see in front of us into one place. And what is fun too is we have a full call for submission for this. It's a very much rigorous process. And sometimes people will send their artworks that's already created for the zine, but sometimes people will also create it because they feel compelled to the call for submission. And this is exactly the type of conversation that we're hoping to have with our audience.
So if people wanted to submit to your zine, how do they do that?
So we have one call for submission a year right now. We used to have 2 publications a year, but with the events back in person, it's too much. So our call for submission usually launches end of January, start of February, and then you have a full month to submit. And to this community, I can say that I'm going to do a Taylor Swift thing here. Our next call for submission for next year will be intense and chaotic.
Ooh. Okay. And they would find this on the Instagram or?
Instagram. They can subscribe to our newsletter to be the first one to know about it, or our website, of course.
Of course. Okay. So human connection is such a hugely important part of everything you do. And we're now moving into this era of AI. There's a potential for human connection to become the most important currency that we have. I'd love to hear your thoughts around community connection, AI, and kind of how we're evolving technologically, but also as a race, and the potential landscape of the future.
Oh my gosh.
Big question.
Yes, it's a big question. I hope I'll be up to the task to answer it. Actually, you know what? So you mentioned that we're in a cohort together, and Pedro Ruiz, who was a guest on here, is like this genius about AI. So are you.
Oh, Pedro's on a whole nother level.
But I remember Pedro saying, like, in one of our discussions, that AI won't be able to create community no matter what. And even though I knew this, the fact that he said it resonated so much more with me afterwards. And this is again like something that I'm holding on to. Human connection in an era of AI will become more and more special because it's going to get smaller and smaller. Mm-hmm. And creating those opportunities for people to meet, to connect, to touch things, giving them activities will just be so, it's needed because it's forcing the human, to interact with one another. We are still working remote after the pandemic.
Yes.
When we meet people in the grocery store, we kind of like, we don't want to talk to them. The world is going faster. So when you offer the community this space to say, hey, this is the time and place to do it, it becomes so important. And the fact that you're also doing this and they are subscribing to that event also makes them like they are ready to, like they have the proper mindset to interact and engage with the community. I am still learning how to build communities. I'm definitely not an expert, but one thing that I can say from all of the events that we have put together is hone in onto that last long feeling that you want to offer the community. They will forget what was discussed. They will forget the speakers on stage. They will forget the activity. They will forget the food, but they will remember how they felt when they left the room. This goes for everything that you're offering. Could be your business services, could be how you interact with people, could be with your family. People always remember how they felt. So if you focus on that and it's a genuine human feeling that you're offering your community, you know you have a winning recipe.
Oh, it's beautiful. Speaking of communities, how did you meet Chris Stowe? I'm curious.
I mean, I always knew who he was. He was kind of the guru that I was watching at the government as I was like working on my portfolio, like secretly planning my exit. I was supposed to do my government work, but working on other stuff. So I met him through YouTube, but then when Clubhouse came about, that was really fun because then we started to engage, and he always chews my head off every time I ask a question. He's so hard on me, but I'm like, it hurts the ego for a few days, but then I'm like, damn it, he's right.
It's true.
So that's how I got to know him. And I mean, I shook his hand a few times at conferences. I'm going to Adobe Max this year, so hopefully I'll get a chance to do this again. Maybe he won't chew my head off at that time. Crossing my fingers.
Yeah. Good luck with that, Izzy. So for Adobe, speaking of Adobe, you've been working with them doing a lot of lives. Are you going to be participating in lives in the future, or what does that look like for you?
I mean, I hope so. I'm always surprised when they invite me back. It's like a nice, pleasant surprise. And I enjoyed the content that I'm doing with them so much. Right now, I'm working with Phil Palin, who is like this, just Google Phil. He's amazing. And we have this show called Ask a Designer, where we bring real clients with real design problems and we fix them or solve them during our show. And we're always trying to find ideas of content that, like, how can we support the community online, promote the Adobe products, and at the same time doing something that is fun for us and in relation with our personal brand. So it's always a nice challenge to have, but I'm hoping this is going to continue as long as they want me, because I'm loving these engagements.
So also speaking, I'm going to change topic just a little bit. Speaking of community, you've also fallen in love with New York City. So why New York City? And is it the energy? Is it the place? And what are your goals or hopes for doing more there?
Oh my gosh. I mean, first of all, I guess the question would be, who does not love New York City?
It's true.
Like,
It's true.
all my favorite shows, all the movies that I love the most is in New York. I guess like I'm romanticizing New York so much, and it's not that far from Ottawa, which is great. And just, yeah, the energy, the opportunities, the people, just like people take risks over there, which is something that is not happening much in Ottawa. And I think this is why I love it so much. And just the energy. Yeah, like you said, the energy, right? Like here, the city goes to sleep at 8.
Oh.
So I'm exaggerating, but not that much. So yes, I mean, when Caroline Sarrête, who is the founder of New York City, reached out to me asking information about the Ottawa Design Club, and to me, it was just like a coffee chat. Like I did not know she had an intention behind this coffee, and I was just like, blah blah blah. Here's the zine. Here's this, da da da. And she's like, yeah, I'd love to do the same as you and bring this over here. And I was like, what? First of all, New York influences Ottawa, not the other way around. So this was a massive win, and we have worked closely together for a year. And for a brand designer, it's really bad because we don't have a brand guide for the design club. I know. So making sure that the brand values and the goals and how they can integrate the New York culture into their events was definitely like something that was difficult at first, because I mean, we want to have the feeling that wherever you're going, whether it's in Marseille, Ottawa, or in New York, that it's the design club, but you also need to adapt to the community that you're serving. The community is very different in Ottawa than New York than in Marseille, France. So that was a massive learning curve for me, and it was very much like a great exercise for both Caroline and I. And now she's leading without any of my help, and I get to attend as a full attendee, and it's amazing.
So she's leading the Ottawa Design Club in New York City?
So it's called New York Design Club.
New York Design Club. Oh, okay. And how do people find out about that?
You can find it on Instagram. So I think it's New York Design Club, the full name. And they also have a website, which I can't recall the address right now. But
okay,
it's on their bio.
Okay. We'll make sure we put it in the video below. So you have so much going on. You've taken on so much. Your dreams are so big. What is your ultimate goal or dream? And let's just chunk it down to, like, let's say the next 5 years.
Oh my gosh. Right now, I just want to finish the next quarter.
Yes.
You know what? I'm in this problem right now, and a dream would be not to be limited by funding for endeavors like the zine and art exhibitions, because we usually do an art exhibition for the zine launch. And same thing with our events. The fact that we are a design club, even though we serve a very creative and artistic community, we don't qualify for most of the grants that is offered in Canada. And this has been very hard because we always figure it out. And whenever we ask for funding to the stuff that we are eligible, well, the answer is often, well, you guys figure it out and you're doing well. So it's like we're doomed for our great success, and then it's like hard to get the funding. So we're always working extra hard for that. So a dream in the next 5 years would be maybe having that massive recognition that people would be saying, yes, let me just like drop 5K because we know it's going to be done well. And, for sponsors or grants.
Right. Well, who would your dream sponsor be?
I mean, the future would be fun. But Adobe as well, or honestly, any any business that feel that like have our same values, because this has been very important too, is associating with the right people that share our values. So whenever we do reach out for sponsors, it's like, again, like a massive research, because we want to make sure that they're inclusive, that there's no backstories and,
So if you were to give advice to your younger self, what would you say if you looked back at who you were, let's say in high school and where you are now? And let's say some younger listeners are looking up to you and thinking, I want to do that. What advice would you give?
Location does not matter. And this is something I want to say to present Izzy as well, because sometimes I will use that as a crutch. But I just need to look at a few wins from a few months back, and then I'm like, what am I thinking about? I'm being my own wall here. So both for past Izzy and present Izzy.
It's so hard to see when you're being your own wall. That's a really difficult situation, but I do think that over time we become more fully who we are, and then it's easy to see where we set those limitations and overcome them. So in the next year, speaking of limitations, I know you've got a lot going on. There's funding issues. There are location issues that you're working on. What are you going to pursue next? And what would you like to pursue if you were able to overcome that wall?
So for anyone who's listening that would love to open a club, I would love to help to open a new club in another city. Like we have proven it with New York. I'd love to do it again. Maybe somewhere in Europe. That would be super fun and a great challenge. And I mean, just again, on a personal level, making sure that I take great care of myself to have the energy to keep going.
Yes, that's super important. Yeah, maintaining balance.
Yes.
I think about that a lot. We are just about at our question answer phase of the interview. I'm going to open everything up in about 5 minutes to the audience, but if you have any questions you'd like Izzy to answer, please feel free to drop them in the chat. And then in just a few minutes, I'll invite you to turn on your cameras and you can ask her directly. One question I personally have for you is, you talk a lot about Ottawa being a little bit of a difficult environment to establish what you want and to be able to get the sort of support and, how should I say this, where people see you as someone with potential and power. How are you overcoming that?
I want to prove them wrong.
A little rebellious streak?
Yeah, exactly. You know what? During the pandemic, I booked a call with a local business coach. And he, I was asking, I want to level up. I don't know where I fit, because there was the whole question of niching down. And he said to me, stop waving the Ottawa flag because it's going to harm you. And oh my gosh, that actually hit hard, because I was like, what are you talking about? And obviously, I did not continue to work with that person because I just didn't resonate with that at all. And I understand that that may have been true for him and his career, where people were saying, you're from Ottawa, you're not creative. And sometimes people do tell me, you're from Ottawa, you worked at the government. And I did feel that at the government when I was applying to agencies, because that was another avenue I was trying. So maybe I can exit the government and go work in an agency and then go freelance. But they would not even call me back.
Wow.
Because of the whole government situation where it's not creative. But the pandemic has proven to us that location does not matter, coming back to my earlier point. And I'm thinking, if a girl from Ottawa can have multiple live streams on Adobe, I'm doing something right.
Sure.
And yes, I come from a even smaller town from outside Ottawa where there's less than 1,000 people. So whenever I think about that, Izzy, being on a worldwide platform live streaming, that's where I'm wow, location does not matter at all. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I have a question here for you from Matthew. He says, I was able to attend your last Ottawa Design Club event. Can you expand on how you were able to put together and prepare such a unique and amazing interactive event, challenges and wins included?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So for everyone, the last event we did a fully different recipe, where because it was the end of summer, we figured maybe the TED Talk format would not necessarily be the most welcome. People want to more in a party vibe. So we decided to have a panel, so something more dynamic. And the theme was going against AI a little bit. So continuing in this conversation, hands-on vibes. So we invited people that were working with their hands every day and how we can learn from them. And we had the regular networking hour, but instead of coming back to another regular networking hour, we had interactive art stations with each of the panelists' craft, so people could participate to a community artwork. So we had a sustainable fashion designer where she takes old denim, and we made a full jacket with patchwork that night, and it looks incredible. The challenges of that event was so much logistics, because 4 different artists, 4 different mediums, trying to build a panel, sets of questions, making sure that the artwork is delivered on time. We had the media pick up this event too, so they wanted to talk to our speakers instead of the organizational team, which that I actually cried about, because I was like, why is it we're already featuring them? We're doing the work in the background. And anywho, so that was a massive lesson. But that morning I was so overwhelmed that I got up, I listened to the interview for the media interview with the speakers, felt so overwhelmed after, went back to bed and literally put the covers on top of me and cried for 2 hours. I just needed to let out the stress, because I was on high production for a full month. One of my volunteers dropped too. I had to pick up everything. One of the volunteers did not show at the event, and we were short for, so there's all of this background stuff that's happening. And again, you run events, so you know how that is. But no one knows that. And then having the feedback from the community saying I had so much fun, and it did remind me to work more with my hands and embrace mistake. This was the overall topic that we wanted people to have at the end of the night was embrace mistakes, because AI will make it look flawless, but human will have personality when you make it. And when it's community, we were all embracing our mistakes at once and making something even more beautiful than AI could ever have done. So yes, massive win for that event. And all of those artworks are being finished as we speak and are going in the next zine and hopefully the exhibition at the launch as well. So there's a part 2 to that event.
Wow. That's so much work, Izzy.
It is so much work. And that's why I'm like, I just need to finish this quarter so then I can think about like what's next for next year.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got another question here from Hannah. She says, "Hey, Izzy, I love hearing your perspective on building creative communities. Can you elaborate on the values you've strongly held on to, along with your journey, and how those values have helped connect you with like-minded people? Can you also share some of the leadership or soft skills in general that helped you bring this community together?"
So I'd say being curious and not having a wall. So whenever you're in a situation where you're meeting people and it could be at conferences, go for it. Just ask the question, go introduce yourself. The other person on the other end will never turn you back, right? Like they want to meet people as well. They are there for the same reasons as you. If you're at the same event, there's definitely something that already connects both of you or in a group. And just let's be honest, how badass if you go to a full group and you're like, "Hey, you guys seem cool. I'm Izzy. Nice to meet you. I'd like to know more about what you do," and giving a compliment when you approach someone like opens up a massive big door, because they will feel flattered and you will not come at like aggressive. So this is something that I personally like to do, or bring a friend. If you have a friend with you, if you're shy, having like someone that introduces you or the other way around just makes it so much more easier. And then whenever you feel overwhelmed when talking, you can have that understanding with your friend being like, like nudge, like say something. That's why I love to go to events with my fiance, because he knows when I get nervous, and then he'll like hop on, and he's very good at asking questions, and I feel that we balance each other really, really well for that. So find your like your go-to person. And you said leadership skill. I'd say curiosity. This has served me the most when to find speakers. I personally don't chase after stardom for speakers. I chase the story. And the only way that you can do this is by asking the right questions and like diving deeper. Like, okay, like what, like, and people will mostly talk about like what went well, but then you say that sounds good, but like, what was the hardship? What have you learned from that? And when you dare asking those questions, then that's when the full storytelling starts to happen. And this is when you can discover not only massive good lessons, good takeaways, but also developing that connection with whoever's in front of you.
Good. I have one more question I'm going to ask you, but while I'm asking you this, if anyone would like to turn on their camera and speak to Izzy directly after this next question, you are absolutely welcome to do so. Okay, so your next question is from Brian. He says, "I know it may be like asking a parent what is their favorite kid, but which are you enjoying more these days? Running live events or creating the yearly zines, and why?"
Okay. Definitely zine. A reason why is I feel that the zine is, again, there's a lot of people working on the zine. We're like 15, if not more. But it's like packaging everything that I offer into, again, one little design package, because there's the curator and art that is in there. There's the design of it, but there's also the whole strategic and storytelling component of what goes into the zine. And it takes a lot of thinking and strategy in order to make everything fit together and offer an experience. Something we have not touched on, we also try to make our zines multisensorial to reinvent the reading experience, where we offer QR code with music, with video. We even gave at some point some gum to chew as you were reading it. Like, it was part of the whole experience. So that's why I feel that it's definitely the zines that I prefer the most. They take the most work, but they are literally Izzy on a silver platter.
Oh, I love that. I love that. All right. So we have 10 minutes left. If anybody has any questions or would like to turn their camera on and speak to Izzy directly, you are absolutely welcome to do so. Well, Izzy, I have one last question for you.
Okay.
And this question is about, as you're evolving as a person, but you're discovering your strengths and you're overcoming your obstacles, how has the way that you perceived yourself changed? And if you look back 4 years even to the pandemic to where you are now, who were you then and who are you becoming?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I don't know. Again, my fiance's in the room, so maybe he can confirm or not. So there was one instances that happened to me last year where a client stole one of my logos.
Ooh.
And it had to go into a legal discussion. And I'm still insecure. I'm working on this, but I was so insecure before that I would have to like tell myself and all the time that it was okay if I felt like that, or if I felt stress, and I would be validating with people like, this is it. I'm right? I'm right to feel like this. And that took so much energy, and that's the only thing I could do in a day, or sometimes even longer if the problem was not resolved. And I still do that sometimes, just like sharing the issue when I'm like, whoa, this happened, like that's not okay, right? Like, but it's more in like conversational tone instead of like validate me type thing. And I was also surprised when the whole logo incident happened, how much I was able to, and I can never say that word, so please help me out, but
compartmentalize.
Yes. Thank you. Like everything that had to be done that week, because when I had that discussion with the client, it was the same week as I had 2 Adobe Lives, 1 event to run, and then a legal discussion. And that was a lot for a nervous system. But I was like, wow, I can actually divide everything and give it the proper amount of attention. That to me was a massive sign of growth, that I could keep my cool for everything else.
Yeah, that's really difficult to do that. Yeah, a lot of respect to you for that one. I'm still working on that personally. All right, Izzy. Well, those are all the questions I have for today. I would love for you to let people know if you have anything that you want people to know about that you're working on, where people can find you and connect to you, and your next year of future initiatives. We would love to hear about all of it.
Yes, so you can find me on Adobe Live. Ask a Designer has been renewed for the full month of September and half of October before Adobe Max. So check that out. We are in the process of making another zine called Building Bridges, which is going to be super fun. It's about bringing community together or bringing stuff that does not go together, which is great. There's 2 more Ottawa Design Club events. So if you are in the area, I'd say check that out. There's a speaker event and obviously zine launch that is in the works. And I'm also, feels like a forever project now, but working on my website. I have been without a website for like a year now. And I feel like people know that I'm a designer, but they don't know that I'm a designer or like what I can do. So that to me is the apex of like the project. And I find that this will probably unfold what is going to happen for next year, because I still don't know what's happening next year.
Amen. I feel you on that. Izzy, thank you so much for joining us today. It is so lovely to see your face and talk to you as always. You're such a powerful leader. The communities you build are beautiful, and it's an honor to speak to you.
It was so fun to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Izzy. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. I hope you go check out Izzy's projects and what she has going on. And if you're in the Ottawa area, please go check out her design club. Thank you, everybody. Go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I forgot to say, if you want, because I saw in the chat, if you want to buy a zine, we have a Shopify, so you can buy them on our website.
Oh, yeah. Yes. And they're beautiful. They're just stunning. Well,
which one do you recommend we start with? Because I see there's like 6 of them on the website.
Oh, so actually I need to make sure that the inventory is correct, but we only have 5 and 6 available. Everything else is sold out.
Any other last minute questions before we shut the room? Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.
Hey everyone, Devron Bowman, founder of The Developing Life here. Just wanted to say thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes with thought leaders, designers, and change makers. If you'd like to dive deeper into today's topics or you have thoughts that you'd love to share, feel free to join the conversation with us on social media by following The Developing Life's channels on LinkedIn or any of our team members. We would love to hear your takeaways and keep the dialogue going. If you know someone who'd find value in these conversations, please share the podcast with them. It's one of the best ways to help us grow this community of creative minds. Lastly, reviews make a huge difference. So, if you have a moment, leave us a quick rating or a few words on your favorite podcast platform. Not only will it mean the world to us, but it will also help more people discover the show. Thanks again for being part of The Developing Life. Together, we're building a community where creativity thrives and connection grows. Until next time, stay curious, stay creative, and keep developing.